Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Sharon Bown, and joining us this evening from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Darren Cooper. We warmly welcome the family of Corporal Patrick McCarthy, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge General Paul Nakasone, Director of the National Security Agency, United States of America, accompanied by Mr. Ben Stroughton, Deputy Director General Capability and Transformation, Australian Signals Directorate, and their accompanying delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching a live broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, would you now please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Those requiring a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Corporal Patrick McCarthy. Patrick McCarthy was born on the 8th of June 1893 in Birchip, Victoria. He was one of 8 children born to labourer John McCarthy and his wife Eliza. Patrick received his education at St Laborious Catholic Primary School in Eaglehawk before gaining employment as a miner. At the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, he was living in Bendigo. Patrick McCarthy enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 17th of April 1916. He was assigned to reinforcements to the 7th Battalion and commenced a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service 2 months later, sailing from Melbourne on the troop ship Themistocles. Private McCarthy arrived in England in early September and continued training alongside other new recruits before being transferred to the 37th Battalion. Following a short stay in an English hospital, McCarthy began his journey to the Western Front in early February 1917. Reaching the trenches in the midst of a bitterly cold winter, McCarthy contracted influenza and was returned to hospital before he could join his unit. After recovering, he was detached to join the 3rd Canadian Tunnelling Company, owing to his experience as a miner in civilian life. He joined his new unit around Ploegstert Wood in Belgium, where Allied mining companies were digging a series of tunnels beneath enemy lines in which they would later place explosives. McCarthy worked with the Canadians until May 1917, when he was finally able to join his original unit, the 37th Battalion. Having returned to his infantry role, McCarthy would reap the benefits of his time tunnelling with the Canadians during his first major battle at Messines in June 1917. The Allies' attack began following the detonation of 19 mines which had been laid beneath the German trenches via the tunnels which McCarthy and his comrades had worked on for several months. The explosion ripped through the enemy trenches, destroying their front lines and allowed Allied troops to advance on their objectives almost unopposed. The explosion caused by these mines was so loud that many claimed it was heard in England, several hundred kilometres away. Following the main advance, McCarthy was promoted to corporal and granted a short period of leave in England. He rejoined his unit at the end of June and in August was awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal for his actions in the attack at Messines. His citation noted, "During the consolidation of the Green Line, McCarthy's company was suffering heavy casualties in advance of the objective and firing from a strong concrete emplacement. This man moved forward in company with a scout in the face of heavy machine gun fire and having worked his way around to the back of the emplacement, threw bombs through the loophole from which the gun was firing, thereby succeeding in silencing it." Corporal McCarthy took part in the next major battle of the war just a few months later in October, when his unit attacked enemy positions in Broodcinder Ridge at Ypres. His battalion's commanding officer described the scene which confronted the men. Everywhere bore unmistakable evidence to the fact that a deadly battle had recently been made. Shovels, picks, broken duckboards, tools of every description lay scattered around in large quantities. Tanks lay where they were put out of action by direct hits from the enemy shells. Putrefied masses of German dead lying in fantastic heaps tarnished the atmosphere beyond pleasantness. Pillboxes still remained, although their exteriors were somewhat damaged by our own heavy shells. Working parties were busy, generally preparing for the new onslaught to be made. Officers present at this conference saw vividly what was before them and were not deterred by the gruesomeness of the picture which had been vividly painted for them. The fighting at Broodcinder cost Australian units alone some 6,500 casualties. Having survived this carnage, it was a matter of weeks before McCarthy was again sent into battle when his unit took part in the attack on Passchendaele. The battalion's advance on the ridge was preceded by several days of heavy rain, which turned the shell-torn earth into a sea of thick mud. With the rain still falling, the battle was rushed forward to take place on the 12th of October 1917. Advancing at dawn, the attack quickly floundered in the horrific conditions of the battlefield. Troops were unable to keep up with the artillery barrage, some getting caught in the mud, while others simply vanished beneath it. The attack was called off soon after. 8 weeks of fighting between Ypres and Passchendaele had cost 5 Australian divisions some 38,000 men missing, wounded or killed. Among their number was Corporal Patrick McCarthy, who was last seen laying wounded on the battlefield. He remained listed as missing in action until May 1918, when a court of inquiry determined that he was killed in action during the attack on Passchendaele on the 12th of October 1917. Patrick McCarthy was 24 years old. His family members later paid tribute to their son and brother in a memorial notice placed in the Bengonian newspaper. Just when his life was brightest, just when his life was best, his country called. He answered, and now in God's hands he rests. McCarthy's final resting place was never found. Today, he is commemorated on the Meningate Memorial in Ypres, Belgium, among more than 50,000 others who have no known grave. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal Patrick McCarthy, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes today's last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of our redevelopment project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.